Thank you so much for joining us on this interview today. We are very glad to have you. We'd like you to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, your work around mental health for Black men, and what your community is like with regard to mental health.
Yes, so my name is Claude. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. I am based out of the Chicagoland area. I have been in the field of mental health since 2010. So after I graduated from University of Illinois, I decided to take a year off of work and kind of get my foot in the door in the mental health field because I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to use my psychology degree. So I started working at a residential facility, really enjoyed it, and ended up getting my master's in 2013 in marriage and family therapy. And since then, I've worked in a lot of different settings. I worked in residential facilities for kids who were in the foster care system and they weren't able to be safe in their home environment. They either had really aggressive behaviors or they had really severe mental health issues and their parents or caregivers weren't able to provide adequate care for them. So they would go to a residential facility and they would just live there 24/7, go to school there, get around the clock care. They would go to therapy once a week. They would have group therapy twice a week. And then we would have other different activities that help them improve like their socialization skills and their emotional regulation. And then after that, I worked in a couple different high schools and elementary schools across Chicago. I worked for some non-for-profits that had some grant funding, so they were able to provide free therapy services for the students in the high schools that I was working at. So I would take the kids out of class that were having behavioral issues. I would do individual therapy that was trauma informed because a lot of the young Black men in Chicago have been impacted by community violence, domestic violence, just all the things that come with growing up in a poverty-stricken area. Then I would run stress management groups so they can learn how to kind of deal with the different stressors that were going on in their lives. And I also provided professional development trainings for the staff and teachers there on how to be trauma informed and how to view the students' behaviors through a trauma lens so they weren't being reactive and personalizing some of the aggressive behaviors and things that the kids were exhibiting. So that was a majority of my experience. In 2018, I started my therapy practice, CK Psych, where I see couples, work with working professionals primarily, and I work with teens as well. And currently I'm working as a EAP consultant or employee assistant consultant for United Health Group. And I have a partner site, Discover Financial, where I go in and provide individual therapy, groups, trainings, and such. So to answer the second part of your question, one of the things that I'm definitely seeing just growing up in Chicago and working with the community is there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of trauma in our community and things like community violence. There's a lot of death and murder. There's a lot of family members that are dealing with grief because of different family members or friends who have died or have been incarcerated. There's a lot of domestic violence in our community as well. And just a lot of people just struggling with meeting their basic needs, just being able to afford rent, be able to afford food, be able to take care of their kids. And that causes stress as well. And it makes it really difficult for people to try to get ahead because they're kind of in survival mode. They're working a lot of jobs that are not paying them adequately, especially with the cost of inflation. Everything is so expensive now. They're barely able to afford just the basic necessities. And it's causing a lot of stress in our community. So that's kind of like a summary of like kind of what I do and what, kind of what my focus is in the mental health field.
Okay, thank you. You've sort of gone ahead to answer one question I had about what are some of the stresses you've identified along your work. And so now you do therapy. That is the intervention you use. Do you perhaps mix that up with other sort of interventions in your work, or is it just therapy?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I primarily do therapy, different forms of therapy, whether it's individual, family therapy, couples counseling. I do trainings as well too. I facilitate trainings usually for organizations or companies that, some companies like to do things around Mental Health Awareness Month, or their employees are struggling with stress management or work-life balance. So they want to help support the employees and give them some practical solutions on how to manage those issues. So they'll kind of, hire me to come out and facilitate trainings as well. In my role as an employee assistant consultant, I kind of act as a one-stop shop for like other community resources too. So if a employee comes to see me and they're having difficulty with housing, they're having difficulty with childcare, if they're having any other kind of health related issues or any other stressors, I can help connect them to community resources as well. So that's pretty much what I do. I connect them to community resources. I do trainings and I facilitate therapy sessions.
Okay, so it's quite clear that the main stressors for most of these people are just that they can't afford the vital conditions for living, housing, food, and all that. So how do men respond to this kind of interventions towards their mental health? Do they really show up? Are they open to seek help and to receive help?
Yeah. In general, it's very difficult to get men to reach out for help. Not even just mental health related, but just in general, we can be very prideful, and, men who really identify with the masculine kind of archetype want to be able
Yeah.
to handle everything on their own. They want to be seen as strong and capable, and want to be seen as the providers and protectors, and we have all the answers and solutions. So when you have that type of mindset, and then you're starting to struggle in different areas of your life, especially with mental health, it can be very difficult to acknowledge that you don't have it all together, you don't have all the answers, and you need a little bit of help. So I see some men, I think, as time has been going on, some men are becoming more open to, coming to see a therapist. I
Mm-hmm.
think one of the things that is important to acknowledge is that there's not a lot of Black therapists and not a lot of Black male therapists at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, even if you're a Black male and you want to go to see a therapist, there's this concern that the therapist might not be able to relate to your experiences, or it might not be culturally competent. So I think that is a significant barrier, because ideally we want to go to people that can relate to us and feel like they truly understand our experience. So I think that's one of the barriers that prevents men, especially Black men, from reaching out for therapy. But I think as more athletes and more, artists have been coming out and acknowledging that they're struggling with mental health issues and talking about their journey with therapy, I think a lot more Black men are being more receptive to the idea of coming in.
It's actually true. Normally, for to create real change, like in the work we do, you need to go back and understand background and stories. And truly, the story of one Black man may not be the story of the other Black man, even though they would have similarities, convergence points where they share experiences. But you are a Black therapist, so does that sort of help to break through to them? And do you have any other approaches that you use to break through to them, to tell them that, see, I identify with what you're going through and I'm just seeking to help? Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been helpful for me is that I try not to put pressure on them to do anything that they're not comfortable with yet. I kind of like ease into that. So I really focus on the relationship building aspect of it, especially
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is coming in and they're like a little bit skeptical or reluctant. A lot of times Black men are coming in because their girlfriend or their wife or another family member is like pushing them to do it, and they're not
Yeah.
really wanting to do it. So I always tell them, like, I acknowledge the fact that, it's difficult to open up and be vulnerable with somebody that you don't know that well. And I let them know that I'm not gonna push you to do anything you don't feel comfortable with. And I just focus on just building a relationship and connecting with them, finding some like commonality between us and some relatedness. And I use humor a lot in therapy. A lot of men like to talk about, sports and other, masculine topics. So that's a way that I can kind of bridge the gap. And my goal with that is just to normalize me as a person. Sometimes people view therapists as not real people that have issues and their own struggles and stuff. So I really try to really humanize me, and I want them to see me as somebody they can feel comfortable being vulnerable with. And then as time goes on, I'll start to kind of intervene a little bit more and kind of challenge some of their thoughts or some of the ways that they're behaving that's negatively impacting their mental health. So it's a very slow process, especially with men that are reluctant to come see a therapist.
Okay. So currently we have some of those interventions like therapy, but do you think there could be other innovative ideas that we could use to, help Black men and their mental health? Or maybe ways that the system could help Black men to sort of be more mentally healthy as their white counterparts, because statistics show that they suffer more, even though they could have the same rates of mental illness, but Black men tend to suffer more at the tail end. So are there any innovative solutions that you think could be done, maybe from a systemic point of view, to change that trend?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let me think about that a little bit. Well, one of the things I'm really big on is just normalizing the act of like seeking out help. So I think if there's any type of like initiatives or campaigns that can be created, whether it's through, media, social media, people that have some influence and power in society, being able to like acknowledge that they're struggling with their mental health and talking about, some of their own challenges regarding mental health. I think it can help reduce the stigma and encourage, men specifically to like reach out to help. Because I think that's the biggest piece, is just the acknowledging that you're struggling, and then also having the resources available when they are ready to reach out for that help. I think also just more, I guess promoting or marketing or encouraging Black men to enter the mental health field too, because if people are reaching out for help and there's not enough Black male clinicians, I mean that's a significant issue. You can't tell people to reach out and then it's like there's nobody there that they can feel comfortable talking to. So I think one of the things I'm really big on is always encouraging, especially young Black men that are showing an interest in like working with people or interest in psychology, to enter the mental health field. And I know a lot of Black men are just like, well, it's not that much money in the field, I'm not gonna really make that much money. And I tell them there's ways that you can make a good living off of being a therapist. So just encouraging people to young Black men to enter the mental health field.
Okay, and definitely if we're going to experience change at the higher levels, we have to start small. And these Black men belong to families. They are someone's son, someone's husband, somebody's brother. So how do we handle them at those levels? Because most of the time we just give them pressure to go to therapy. And clearly that doesn't help. Maybe they're just struggling with, since most of them live below the poverty line and they're expected to be providers, all of that expectation. And they barely can meet those expectations. And that is also one of the stresses. So how can we help them, at the grassroots, at the families, at the place of work? How can we help them as those who live with them daily and, get to interact with them on a daily basis?
Yeah. The important thing that you said is not pressure or push them. to seek out help before they're ready. But one of the things that I always tell people is just let them know that you have their best interest at heart, that you are there to support them. Always provide the resources. Like sometimes Black men are not aware of what help is out there. So even like, you know, reaching out to a therapist on their behalf and or somebody that can help and asking them like what resources are out there are available for my brother or my husband or my partner. He's struggling with his mental health, and he's like somewhat open-minded, but he's a little bit reluctant here. Are there any resources that that could benefit him? So just kind of have that on hand when he's ready. And then I think sometimes for us, we just have a lack of awareness. We don't even realize that our mental health is at a critical stage because we're so used to suppressing how we feel, and we just keep just moving forward. And then it takes like something really significant to happen. We lose our job, or we go through a breakup because we're just exhibiting toxic behaviors, or we almost get killed, or we go to jail. Like something really traumatic has to happen, then we're like, okay, I need to get my stuff together. So pointing out the different warning signs so they can be aware of it. So like if you are using drugs or alcohol excessively to be able to function, like let them know that you have to be mindful that that's not a healthy behavior. You're using it to cope with stress, or if they're sleeping a lot, or they can't sleep at all, or if they find themselves like wanting to isolate from everybody, they want to be alone, they don't want to be bothered, or they're angry or they're irritable, like pointing out because everybody has kind of like a baseline level of functioning. So if there's any extreme in their behavior, if there's any drastic change in their behavior, like letting them know that you notice that and they should probably seek out help before it gets any worse. But then also just letting them know like, there's resources out there when you're ready, and not like pressuring them to do so. Because I've seen a lot of Black men that come into therapy, and I could tell they weren't there because they wanted to be there because somebody else encouraged them to be there. And they might come for maybe 1 or 2 sessions, and then they drop off, or they come to session and they don't talk. So you have to wait till people, are ready to invest in that process.
When a Black man is going through an intervention, maybe they are going to therapy or whichever intervention they're going through, or after they are done with therapy. Now they need to heal, and start a process of growth, or maybe continue, so that they can thrive in their daily lives and make sure that they don't snap back to the same space they were before. So how can we ensure that happens, that they don't go back?
Yeah, okay. Yes, I definitely understand where you're coming from now. Yeah, so like the changes in therapy have to be sustainable, and because most of the time people only come in to see a therapist maybe once a week or once bi-weekly. So there does need to be a lot of things kind of put in place, throughout the week, so those changes are sustainable. So like one of the things is having a like healthy like self-care routine. I think that's something that we don't do enough of. We don't prioritize enough. Oftentimes, like our jobs or our families or whatever, that's the main priority. And then oh, I'll get to the self-care later. I might, go to the gym, or I might go get a massage, or I might do something that I enjoy, a hobby or activity. Those things need to be like built into your schedule, because most times people are not going to do those things if they're not, if it's not scheduled or somebody's not encouraging them to do it. So just having like scheduled time, whether it's at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, or you have like a day on the weekend or when you're off, to like do something that helps to relieve stress. I think that's really important. The other thing is to make sure that you're maintaining it like a healthy work-life balance, and you're having like appropriate or adequate boundaries, between your work and your life. So that means like not taking work home with you, having your emails kind of stop coming to your phone at a certain point in time, and then, or just not opening up your emails and waiting till you get to work the next morning to do that. I'm really big on mindfulness too, just the practice of being present and in the moment. So that means maybe when you're at home or you're interacting with your family, making sure that your phone is not in your hand and you're not looking at other things that are distracting you from like what's going on in the moment. Um,
Yeah.
and I think one of the things is like I'm really big in the mind body connection too. So like also taking care of your physical health, making sure you're working out, making sure you're eating a healthy diet. I think those things coincide with each other. If you're not taking care of your mental health, it's going to impact your physical health and vice versa. So those are some things I think that need to be implemented to help kind of maintain the progress that you're making while you're in therapy.
Okay, thank you, Cloud. So next month, October is going to be is Mental Health Awareness Month and Nonviolence Month.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like you to say something final to those Black men who are watching out there. And what do you have to say to them? One last thing, and maybe tell them if they need help, where can they find you? You know.
Yeah. So I want to say to Black men that it's okay to ask for help, to reach out for help. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're not capable of handling it yourself. But it's just sometimes it's helpful to have a non-biased, non-judgmental professional that can help make it a little bit easier for you. So if you do want to reach out to me or stay in contact with me, my email is clk.therapist@gmail.com. If you're on social media, you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok. My handle is my initial CK and then the word psych. And my website is www.ckpsych.com. So if you guys have any questions regarding mental health, if you're looking to get connected with therapy services, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you very much, Claude, for taking the time to join us on this call. We are very glad to have hosted you. Definitely, this is a very wide topic. I know you have more to talk about, and we have more questions, and I believe you'll have another time, to dig further into this. But thank you so much for taking the time to join us in this, and thank you for everything that you do for our
Thank you for
community.
having me, Mary. Thank you so much.